If you like the sound of jazz music, you will want to take a trip to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture here in New York City. That's where you're going to find the Jazz and Blues ArtBox. It's a collection of more than 400 hours of live performances and exclusive interviews with jazz's greatest musicians. ArtBox was created by jazz aficionado Hans Zurbrigg in Switzerland, and it was donated to the Schomburg Center by jazz producer and pianist George Wein. Now, Shala Lynch is the curator of the center's Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division. Welcome.
Hi, welcome. I'm so glad to be here.
This is pretty exciting. You know, when we think about jazz, it's really part of American history, but in a lot of ways, people don't pay as much attention to it anymore.
Oh, it is America's classical music, if you think about it. Its birth was, it's the music of Black and immigrant America. If that's not America, then what is, right? And it grows over the decades from the 19th century into the 20th century and now the 21st century.
And so it really tells the story of America, from our politics to our economics to the changing face of life, and it's all sort of encapsulated in this sort of entertainment way.
Yes, and that's the way classic jazz is always thought of, right? And what's great about the Jazz ArtBox, Jazz and Blues ArtBox, is it takes us into a modern period that it is 1983 to 2002. You know, most people, many people, not most, not your audience, of course, think that, you know, jazz kind of died and waned and other music like rock and then hip hop took over. But jazz has been around and it's still here, and the Jazz ArtBox is a great way of intersecting with that, because as you said, it's 400 hours, 230 DVDs, but it's of concerts that were produced and filmed by Swedish television, and it includes the greats, you know, the classic names like Dizzy Gillespie, Sonny Rollins, Sarah Vaughan, and then, you know, as it goes from 83 into 2002, more contemporary folks. I think every one of the Marsalis brothers performed.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, earlier you were telling me that, you know, a lot of people can't afford jazz. What did you mean that they can't afford jazz?
Well, you know, one of the things about our culture is become corporatized, right? If you think about jazz in the early 20th century, right, when you would go to a restaurant, was there stereo sound everywhere? Was there Spotify running? Were there TVs and videos? No, if you wanted music, guess what you had? You had a live band. So you could make a living as a musician, as a jazz musician, right? Today it's much harder. It requires contracts and corporate entry, and so that's really different. Plus the cost of concerts. So I want to quiz you, okay? How much does it cost to come to the Public Library and the Schomburg Center to listen to any one of these DVDs or the interviews?
Well, if it's public, then I'm hoping that it's free, although we pay so many taxes in the city. But
exactly, it's free. All you need is a library card. And we appreciate appointments that we can get ready for you. And we have individual stations in our newly renovated division, the Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division, which is on the third floor of the landmark building of the Schomburg.
So what's the literal experience like? You walk in there for this ArtBox. What happens? What do you go into? What is it like?
You walk in and you're greeted by one of our reference librarians. You know, we set you up. We have the capacity to screen, so if you wanted to come in with a few friends and as a group watch one of the interviews or the performances, you could do that. And that's really for any one of the items in our 5,000 square foot collection. But this is our newest acquisition, and so we're pretty proud of it.
So when we look at this acquisition, I'm struck by the fact that though jazz is America's classical music, this is coming from Europe.
Okay, well, so first I want to say it was a donation by George Wein, right? So we're very happy for that donation, the jazz producer and founder of Newport Jazz Film Festival. And so, yes, this is Jazz as America's Music. And your question again was?
But it was recorded by Swiss TV, so this was through a European lens. It's interesting that we didn't document and have it ourselves. It's great. Well, I'm grateful that we have it.
Yes.
But I'm intrigued by the fact that a different continent had to give it back to us.
Yes, well, through their archive. And, sometimes that's something that does happen. That, in the 80s, if we think about what was on television, a jazz concert may not have been the thing that would have been broadcast. And if it was, it might have been broadcast on PBS. So the Swedish government had a different attitude. And they invited all the greats of jazz from all across the world, but many of them are American, to perform. And it was broadcast free on television there, Swedish television. So we'll take Arturo Schomburg is the founding curator of the Schomburg Center, Afro-Puerto Rican. He was told when he was a child in the 19th century that black history didn't exist. He was like, ho ho.
By Americans, right?
No, by Puerto Ricans.
By Puerto Ricans.
When he came to the United States, right, before the Harlem Renaissance, and he saw books and letters and met people, and he was part of one of the architects of the Harlem Renaissance, really, he started collecting these items. So he wasn't going to argue with you about whether black history existed. He was collecting what he later calls in an essay called The Negro Digs Up His Past. Google it. It's the name of the essay. Vindicating evidences, right? So we collect the vindicating evidences of moving image and recorded sound, jazz, genius. And we don't care who has collected it, who has recorded it. It's an important evidence because I'm collecting for the future. In 50 years, when you look back and you want to know what Sarah Vaughan was thinking later on in her life, and you can watch that interview, or Sonny Rollins, or Dizzy Gillespie. It's there for us, vindicating evidences.
Vindicating evidence. What about jazz concerts? I mean, has these festivals become too saturated already? I mean, we think about New Orleans and places like that have these, and hip hop and all these other genres. It's not necessarily what we think of when we think of jazz.
No, jazz started off as the people's music, and I think one of the things that the concerts do is they provide an experience, but it's a very expensive experience. And so that was one of the reasons when Mr. Ween said, are you interested in this set? I thought, we have all this wonderful jazz material that's earlier, our record collection, our films, but in this period we didn't really represent jazz in the contemporary sense. And then the other thing I thought of is, if I want to go listen to jazz, I've got to go to one of those concerts or to a club and spend, right? Here, it only costs...
It's free, right?
It's free! Just a library card.
Thank you so much. Shyla Lynch, curator of the Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division at the Schomburg Center. Thank you
for having me.
So much. And thanks so much for watching Arise America in New York. I'm Duarte Geraldino. We'll see you tomorrow. Really excited about this. I want to get one of those rooms.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's actually a lot of fun. I had,